I really came to know Jim Downing when him and 8 or 9 men joined the organization many, many years ago called the First Class Citizen Council. And their aim was to better the community as a whole, have better education for our children, help get scholarships so the kids can go to college, help with crime. And he wanted to make, this organization wanted to make sure that we have representation on city council and the school board. Now, I'm going back a few years now. And during this time, we had no black representation, none whatsoever. And we would run a black, half of the black population was supporting, very little white support. Couldn't win. And then there was a family by the name of the Activism family, who were deeply involved in politics in Aliquippa. In fact, the father was a tax collector, and then his son became a tax collector, his other son became a councilman, and one son became a county commissioner and a congressman. And I'm talking about a fellow by the name of Eugene. And years ago, working in the steel mill, a lot of people were killed trying to form a union, the steel workers. A lot of people. The company would pay hitmen to kill the people to keep them from organizing, because the company did not want the employees of GNL to have good wages and good benefits. So over the years, as they were organized and different people would get killed, but everything continued. And Aliquippa was the first local union in the history of the United States. That was Local 1211 on Franklin Avenue. Now, the first president of the Local 1211 was Mr. Atkinson's dad. Do you know who the first vice president of Local 1211 was? Anybody except the family? Anybody know?
The son.
Anybody know? It was James Downing's father. I didn't say the first black vice president. I said the first president, who just happened to be black. So a bond was formed between the Atkinson family and the Downing family. And Eugene Atkinson decided it was time that blacks should be represented in the responsible position. He fought against the white establishment, but he was determined, and he called on James Downing to run for council on a major Democrat ticket, which would have been the first. So he met with Jim Downing and told him it was time the blacks had their own representation, and he wanted him to run for city council. Jim says, the only way I'll run, Salt has to run too. He said, Jim, there's only one position. He said, well, I'm not running unless Salt runs with him. So there was opening on the school board. So Gene told Jim, he said, well, you think Salt will run for school board? Jim said, yeah, he'll run for school board. Now, he didn't ask me, though. He told his man that I would run. So he says, okay, say, you on the ticket for council, Salt's on the ticket for school board. So now Jim has to come tell me. He come to my house and say, hey, man, I'm running for council, and you running for school board. I said, what? Oh, yeah. I said, Atkinson say he's going to put both of us on the ticket. I said, Jim, I said, you don't commit me to anything. Let me commit myself. He said, I'm telling you now, you're running for school board. Okay? So I was talking over with Jackie, and she said, you know, Salt, Mr. Downing's an honorable man. He will not steer you wrong. If he says you run for school board, you run for school board. Okay. I ran for school board, and the whole ticket won. First in the history of Aliquippa. Jim Downing was the first black councilman elected. Salt Smith was the first black school board member elected. But I was not the first to serve. George Baby Walker had been appointed to the school board 6 months before I won. So me and Jim were the first black elected. So that evening, Jim called me to his house and says, hey man, say, you know, we made history. I said, okay, Jim. He said, you know, Salt, if we do a good job, it'd be easy for people to come behind. He said, you make a commitment to me and I make a commitment to you. We won't disgrace our families and our nationality. and it'll be easy for the other ones to come behind it. And we make that commitment. Jim served 8 years on council, but he put me in a very odd situation because I was on the school board and he was on council. And he worked himself up to be the chairman of the street department, which took care of the street and the garbage department. And so when somebody would complain, they would call Jim down. Well, Jim Downey would call Salt Smith. He said, hey man, says, they didn't pick up the garbage at this lady lived at 1012 Main Street. I said, what are you calling me for? He said, take care. Then he would go to work. And you know, I made some phone calls, it was taken care of. Next day he would call me, hey man, says, this lady complained about potholes in front of our street. And don't forget, I'm on the school board. He says, take care, and hang the phone up. I made some calls, and it was taken care of. And he went on and on and on, and he had me doing some things that I wasn't supposed to be doing. And one day Mr. Downey said, you know, Saul, Jim loves you. He says, he's making you do these things because he's making you help the people. And one day, it's going to be easy for you. And I didn't have an idea what she meant by that. But as time goes on, Jim did something special for me. Bernard said Jim served 2 years on council, which was a term of 8 years. I served 32 years. That's what a lot of people ready to help him, especially in his church, under the guidance of Bishop Clark. But when Jim was appointed to the Water Authority, now here's where it really gets tricky. He was on the board of directors of the Water Authority, and one day he was in Hank Frank's office. Hank Frank was the general manager. And Hank told Jim, he says, Jim says, in 3 or 4 years I'm planning on retiring, and I would like to bring somebody in so I can teach them for 3 or 4 years, and when I leave, they can take over. He said, so I want us to get together and try to come up with somebody that I can work with. Downey says, I know who that person is. He says, well, we got to sit down and talk. He said, no, we don't have to sit down and talk. That's Salt Smith's position. He said, well, you know, yeah, everybody likes Salt. That won't be no problem. So now he's making a commitment to me to become the assistant manager of the Water Authority without telling me. So now he comes home to my house, knocks on my door. He said, hey man, we got to talk. It's okay, Jim, I'm going to my back room. He says, Hank Frank's going to be retiring in about 3 or 4 years, and he wants to bring somebody on the Water Authority as assistant manager. I said, well, that's great, Jim. I said, who you think it should be? He said, you. I said, oh, man, here I am, very successful insurance business. I said, Jim, he said, I already made the commitment, so talk it over with Jack. Now you eat. So I talk it over with my wife, and she says, so, we doing real well in the insurance business. You winning awards. We flying all over the country, receiving awards, been one of the top salesmen for the Prudential Insurance Company in the United States, and we're doing real well. But every day Jim would come and see me and say, what day you going to start? What day you going to start?